Here we go.
Oh yeah. It's a kickback.
Again.
It's the kickback. Yeah, it's a kickback.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Kickback Live from the MMA Underground. We are your hosts from the Knee on Belly podcast, Nate,
John,
Brandon.
And tonight we are talking all things, boys, UFC 293, giving our final thoughts and predictions before the pay-per-view tomorrow night. And obviously, per usual, we want you guys to chime down in the live chat. Let us know your picks, as we move along. Already see a couple popping up down there. I will say, was it King Nung off top?
First comment.
Brought to you by, what was it?
Raid Shadow Legends.
I figured it'd be PGA Tour 2000 or Tiger Woods, whatever the golf game is.
Maybe he's just trying to plug us with the promo.
Might be. But with that, boys, how we doing on the eve of UFC 293?
Doing good.
I'm hyped, man. Izzy's fighting. That's all I got.
That's all you need.
Yep.
I love it. Yeah, John. That's all John needs. What was some other? We had another one in there that we were kind of just discussing.
Galactus in the chat saying that there's some easy money on the early cards and he's staying away from the main card.
Some great fights on the early card, which we're going to get to here in a minute. And we were just kind of talking. I kind of understand the thought process behind that because when you look at the main card, I feel like there is so many on paper that kind of look like mismatches, or like we even just talked about, the odds are crazy, right? But there's liable to be some upsets.
Well, when you do these country ones, you just get that urge to just pick all the people who are from the country that are on the card.
Fair enough.
It's kind of like a mind game where it's just like, I'm not going to pick all those guys. You're like, but wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's a home game for them.
And I do want to discuss a couple things, boys, before we get into the card. First of which being this UFC 5 trailer, right? The video game. And I don't know how many gamers we have in the chat and how everybody's feeling about UFC 5. Feel free to chime in and let us know. I will say off top, I have not been a fan of any of the UFC games since EA has taken over. I've tried about every other year. I give it another shot. I lose interest pretty quick.
Yeah.
So take that for what it is. But even before this trailer dropped, I was all in on this game. I was sending you guys all the stuff that I was reading and all the updates and changes that they're making. So I was excited already. And then, man, that trailer drops yesterday. First off, that just the end there where the music cuts. Of course, it's John Jones, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. But then the Fedor right there at the end was like, oh, come on.
I do want to know this, though.
Yeah.
How much sweeter would it have been if it was Francis?
I mean, yeah.
That would have been like the pre-orders in now.
Yeah.
But Fedor, as far as if you know about Fedor, you know.
I know the one that never happened. But I'm excited for a UFC game for the first time in years, and I can say off top, I will be purchasing this game on release day. I'm that excited for it.
Was it just the trailer that got you? Or
No, that's what I'm saying. It was even, I've been sending you guys stuff like for the past week and a half about, because they've kind of been releasing like changes and things that literally a lot of the things I didn't like about the game, they're kind of like, have been like slowly changing. So I'm all in, man. But then just seeing that trailer, it's like, man.
I wonder how Connor feels about being taken down by Michael Chandler in the trailer.
Man, I've seen a lot of people like, this doesn't look like Connor, and this is bald Connor. And I know they said that there's going to be like 3 different versions of Connor in the game. Fair enough. But it's like, this is still a video game. Like,
right.
It doesn't.
King Nun says, I am splendid, boys.
Splendid. King Nun, you going to be getting in on that UFC 5? If so, let's run it online.
Yeah.
I want King Nun on UFC 5 online. That's what I want in my life.
And listen, if the game turns out as good as we hope it is, maybe there's some live streaming in the future of playing people.
Yeah, maybe we'll just live stream it. That would be kind of fun. Last thing that I wanted to bring up, something else that just kind of like, not real big headline, but kind of popped up this week, and that is this, what you got?
King Nun. Brandon, how are you? I'm only asking Brandon.
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for asking.
Fair enough. Was this custom belt from Alexa Grasso, and I mean, just wow. I mean, that thing is just a beaut. I love that Dana and the UFC too are actually going to like present her with it, let her wear it around fight week, do all the media stuff with it. And I hope if she wins it, that's the belt also that they wrap around her waist. And I'm sure they will. But this is the same belt. I went back and looked because I remember when Yair had his interim title, he had a custom belt. It's the exact same one, and it's the exact same guy that made him. So I don't know why the UFC did not get behind that one as much.
Well, it seemed like Yair, they came to that the designer came to Yair and gave it to him.
Sure.
And then they probably seen that. I was like, oh, dude, we got one more we can give it to. And it's Alexa Grasso.
Well, and as big as this, next week's card
Right.
with the UFC Mexican Independence thing, I'm sure they wanted to do something a little extra. But it did get me thinking, like, as a former, like, pro wrestling kid, right, growing up, I would love to see the UFC do more of this. I love that the belts in WWE were different. Like, they all kind of had their own personality and style. Like, dude, remember the hardcore belt? Like, hands down, probably one. The Smoke and Skull belt. I mean, there's just so, like, when guys won belts and they made it their own. The spinner belt with John Cena. $1 Million Man. I mean, why can't Sean O'Malley have, like, a tie-dye or a hot pink strap, right? Like, that'd be pretty cool. Or imagine Izzy, who's fighting this weekend, a guy who's creative of that. If you gave him creative freedom to, like, kind of design the strap or, whatever, like.
So here's the question. So if you give O'Malley the tie-dye belt, right?
Yeah.
And then let's say he loses to Merab. Does Merab get put?
You give him the normal, like, black
okay, so
strap.
he doesn't get O'Malley's.
Yeah, no.
Okay,
You would only put the tie-dye belt back on O'Malley.
Okay.
But yeah.
Or he might trade the jacket for the belt straight up. I mean, because he definitely still has the jacket.
He might just take a golden jacket like that.
Or, there might be something with the Merab, you never know. But, no, that would be very cool. The only thing I will say is, what we know about in sports is sometimes there is a little bit of superstition, like curses.
Yeah.
Yair got it. It didn't go well for him, hopefully.
Yeah, man, I'll say, I know this is a UFC 293 pick stream, but, man, in terms of this rematch between Grasso and Shevchenko next week, I genuinely have no clue. Like, and I'm not even just saying that for the parody of it, or, like, I have gone back and forth on that fight so many times because I think my, like, instincts is, like, you see, like, Nunes and Pena, sorry, and you're just like, yeah, of course, like, Shevchenko's going to run it back the same way Nunes did, but then it's like, man, I just don't know.
Man, there were moments in that rematch for Amanda where it looked a little dicey when she was on the ground, so I don't know.
I know. I just saw the cameras cut out. I apologize. We've been kind of dealing with some technical difficulties on this other camera that's on John and them. So hopefully we get through it. We'll try to make it work as the stream goes on. But boys, let's get into it. And before we dive into UFC 293, John, rate, sub, follow, let the people know what we need them to do.
All right, everybody. We host a weekly mixed martial arts show called the Neon Belly Podcast. We release new episodes every Monday. You can check out the pod on all streaming platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We do ask that you subscribe to the pod on whatever streaming platform you prefer and give us 5 stars. Give us a follow on all socials at Neon Belly Podcast. We also ask that you follow the MMA Underground at the UG on all socials for other great content, including interviews and other weekly content.
And you can go on there and check out our article that just got put up Wednesday night. You just go. It was the title was The Ultimate Crossover, and we took a bunch of UFC fighters and put them in NFL teams and positions, and go read it. It's a fun read, but if you go to mixedmartialarts.com, you can check out that article, and we would gratefully appreciate it. Boys, tomorrow night, UFC 293, live from Sydney, Australia, with a main card start time of 10 p.m. Eastern Standard. And, I got a quick fun fact about Australia, boys, because when you think about Australia, the first animal everyone thinks of is...
kangaroo.
The national animal, which is the kangaroo. But did you know, boys, Australia actually houses a larger population of camels than Egypt? And they have so many camels, in fact, they export them to Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Whoa.
Didn't know that at all.
Did either of you guys have that camels on your Australia bingo card?
No. I was going to go like wallaby or something else, man. I didn't have that.
Well, let us get to this card, boys. And I think the best way to start is I want to kind of talk about this card as a whole because I'm very curious to know everyone's. Did you have something?
Oh, no. It's just King Nung is going off saying that Merab just gets a loincloth for his belt.
Fair enough.
And just said some other stuff about forgetting other fighters.
Got a lot going on.
Okay. Yeah. Let us begin with this card as a whole. As I mentioned, I'm very curious as well in the chat to get I want to know everybody's interest levels on this card, right? It's kind of caught a lot of flack, and maybe rightfully so, right? They're asking us to spend $80 now of our hard-earned money on this card. And we kind of said it on our Monday show that for a card that has one of the, if not the biggest, current fighting UFC stars, because, Conor is always going to be the biggest, but as terms as active, Izzy's probably the biggest pay-per-view star right now. it definitely does lack the star power as you move down the card outside of the main event. I know, like us as hardcores, we'll watch anything. But I am curious to know people in the chat, your guys' thoughts on this. But even for you guys, because we did kind of talk about it Monday, but now as we've moved closer to the actual fight and it's here, have your interest levels kind of went up any for this fight? And even for people in the chat, I'm interested, are you interested in just the main event? Are you interested in more than 2 fights, maybe more than 4 fights, 5 fights, or are you just maybe you're not even going to buy this card? I don't know. But where are you guys? If your interest level's kind of gone up now as we're here on the eve of it.
Man, so it's kind of weird. So as far as the fights underneath the main event, my interest has gone up ever so slightly, and it's more just because I've invested a little bit of time into looking at each guy and kind of looking at their history and what they're bringing as far as the matchups. And the matchups themselves are pretty nice, but there isn't like an investment as far as like storyline, like we talked a little bit earlier. And as far as the main card, honestly, like before this was ever announced, we had talked a long time ago about potentially seeing Strickland and Adesanya fighting, right? And we talked about how fun the buildup was going to be and how cool that would be to see those two guys go at it. And we're here, and I feel like there's so much left to be desired. Like,
really?
Yeah, man. Like I've watched, and that's just my opinion, but like watching the presser and watching the interactions, like I just don't. It just kind of felt like a letdown to me, honestly. Wow. Like the build up to me didn't seem like it was what it could have been, especially regarding like trash talk and just the personalities and things. But and then the matchup itself. I mean, it is what it is. I think most people are leaning one way, but we'll see.
I'm genuinely gonna go the other way there. Yeah. Like 100%. I actually think Izzy and Strickland did a great job, in my opinion, of selling this fight. I think Strickland came in, was unapologetically himself, for better or worse, however you feel about that. But it did get my attention. I do have interest in seeing this fight more because of what they've done this week. Again, kind of more so on Sean Strickland's side. And I know in MMA as fans that we do value the undercard just as much as the main event. But I think, too, when you kind of make it, like, the perspective is almost just like, look at this as like a boxing card where, like, you are kind of just buying to see the main event. And that's kind of what you get in boxing. Like, most people don't know who's on the undercard of, boxer A versus boxer. Right. You know what I mean? They just don't really care. It's all about the main event. And that's what I feel like we got here. And like Brandon said, as we get into some of these matchups, you're going to see, I think there is some pretty still good matchups on this card.
We got Dorman in the chat saying could be better prelims. But like for me personally, as somebody who is a big Izzy fan and follows a lot of city kickboxing, I know a lot of these guys. I've seen them in training footage and interviews, so I'm hyped for at least 6 or 7 of them. Even the people who are associated, like the Tafas, more of an investment. Right? So I've seen them train. Like you kind of get attached to them, and then just a lot of those guys' fighting styles are just really exciting. So for me, this is better for me than like the Paris card was last week, as far as like knowing names and being excited for cards under the main event.
See, I almost feel like if you removed the obviously the main event, I feel like the Paris card was better than this one, just in terms of a whole for me. But again, like I said, anytime you're getting Izzy on top of a card, it's big business, right? And because he is kind of one of those guys, he's going to attract a lot of people, and some people, because they don't like him. I mean, he is kind of that polarizing guy. And same thing with Sean Strickland, for that matter.
What do you guys think about, like, at the presser, like, Strickland getting a lot of the love from
everybody? I was shocked. I sent that to you guys. I was like, Strickland getting the love?
In the embeddeds, when he was walking around, people would be like, dude, knock him out.
That's crazy.
And I don't know if it's like a New Zealand, Australia thing, or if it's just Izzy himself. Like, I don't know how that dynamic works.
Well, and again, going back to just, like, the presser for a second, like, I do think Strickland was doing a great job kind of, like, firing things up, trying to get hype. It just seemed to me like Izzy just doesn't seem as invested, maybe. Like, he's just kind of I don't think he's looking past Strickland, but to me it just seems like this fight isn't like Drakus. He seemed very intent, like he wants that fight, and then Strickland, I'm just not feeling like Izzy is in it as much. Maybe I'm wrong.
I just almost wonder if he knows he can't win. Like, he knows he's not gonna beat Strickland in a war of words, and when it comes to like different stuff, he did kind of try, with the monster jab and stuff like that. I mean, but like, and in all honesty, and I say it all the time, Izzy's not the greatest trash talker, right? No. He does say, I thought it was funny because obviously Henry's the king of cringe, and then Strickland calling Izzy the Lord of cringe. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's Strickland, right? Like, what do you say?
Right.
And I do think Izzy's taking him very serious. Like, I think his focus is on Strickland, and I think maybe even where some people are obviously overlooking Strickland, as Brandon said, I don't think Izzy is, and he's the only one that doesn't have to overlook him tomorrow night, right? He just has to be all in and kind of completely focus on him there. So we'll see. I just kind of wanted to get everybody's gauge on the card as a whole.
Dorman added a detail that changes his comment. He said, could be a better prelims than the main event. Like, he thinks the prelim card could be better than the main card. Oh,
dude, yeah, no, I kind of agree. We're going to get to some of the prelims here in a minute. I love some of these prelim fights, including, like, the first one with Olberg. Like, I feel like Olberg and Pedro, probably could have swapped those two.
Even Tafa. Like that. I mean,
but I am a little bit higher on Carlos Olberg. Just really like that guy, and we can get to it in a minute. Which kind of brings me to my next thing, another random thing. But it is interesting. I did see, and am I correct? There are 6 city kickboxing fighters.
There would have been 7 had Kai stayed on.
That is insane. That has to be a UFC record for the most fighters from the same gym on a card. Which could also, I think, maybe become like an interesting subplot, because if they all sort of kind of, maybe they start losing, how does that affect, say, the 4th city kickboxing guy that walks out? If you've seen 2 or 3 of your teammates lose, does that start playing in your head like, man, did we train right? Can I trust that I did enough?
How does that affect the coaches?
Yeah, man, it is kind of like a little interesting subplot when you kind of start thinking about that. It's like, we've never, at least that I can recall, never seen like that many people on one card, which is, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I feel like most of the time you might see like a 3 where you had like a Rose and Usman and Gaethje or something. And maybe even some of the like AKA or Wink fights, or Jackson Winklejohn fights. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Granted, some of the guys at the bottom are this, like the very first fight is a guy who's getting his first fight in the UFC. Blood Diamonds only had 2. As you move up, though, you kind of get to that higher level. But I mean, that kind of happened in the last card when Kai Kara lost, and then Izzy had to fight afterwards. But Izzy's the top of that, so sometimes it's hard to compare yourself to the top level of the gym.
And there could be absolutely nothing to that, but it just is like an interesting thing to kind of see tomorrow night, because I feel like that's kind of unprecedented. I don't ever remember hearing of 6 guys from one team. All on the same card. That's crazy.
Well, and then you even, it could have been even more if you start taking in like associated gyms like a Volkanovski or, some of these other situations. Because, I mean, obviously Tuivasa is really cool with them too. So everybody is like pretty much connected that's from Australia there. So it'll be interesting to see how the movement is on the card.
With that, let's get to some of these prelims. John, what is our 3 to see on the prelims tomorrow night?
Alrighty. So, although this card does lack the names, it doesn't lack the potential. For my 3 to see, I'm going to highlight an Aussie, a New Zealand prospect, and that could go on their way to a main card very shortly, and then a fun fight toward the beginning. So, the first one I want to talk about is the main attraction of the prelims. Like we said, probably should have been on the main card, but that's 9-1 light heavyweight New Zealand's own Carlos Olberg. He takes on Daewoo Jung. But this is more of a highlight opportunity for Olberg here.
Yeah, I agree.
Black Jag has won 4 in a row, including 3 first-round knockouts, so don't blink, because Olberg is liable to give you plenty of time to get snacks before the main card starts.
Love Carlos Olberg. One thing we do on our podcast every year for the NFL draft, the same way we did the teams for the start of the NFL season, is we do an MMA draft, and we do 7 rounds, just like in the NFL, and each round has a different stipulation, so you can't just pick, all champions. The last round is any unranked fighter, I believe. Is that our, but whatever it is, I pick Carlos Olberg.
Yeah.
I mean, because I just think potential is just through the roof for this guy, and I'm really excited because I do agree with you. I think this is kind of a showcase spot for him to kind of really go out and maybe get a pretty big win here.
Yeah, I mean, 3 first-round knockouts his last 3 fights, and I mean, the guy's just super fast. Yeah. Obviously, he's training with Izzy and all these other guys. Cody Morrow in the chat, we out you.
Yeah, that boy Cody, what's up?
My next one to watch is Jack Jenkins. At 12-2, he has a chance to make it 10 wins in a row as he faces Chepe Mariscal. I think it's Mariscal, who is on a 4-fight streak himself, but it's the Ozzy Jenkins that I'll be watching, as he has a very violent pressuring style and has broken multiple opponents' legs.
Love this guy,
like
man.
I think they said 3 or 4 of his opponents, he's broken their legs with leg kicks.
That's like one of my favorite ways to see people win.
Just
leg kick
love
TKOs.
Jack Jenkins.
Yeah,
love Jack Jenkins, man.
A lot of potential there. And lastly, toward the beginning of the card, there's a fun fight with City Kickboxing's own Blood Diamond facing Charles Chuck Buffalo Radke. Diamond has lost 2 in a row, not living up to the expectation of his teammates, but gets another chance to right the ship and show that he's more than a good training partner. And he'll be facing the CFFC welterweight champion. Radke has won 4 in a row, and 5 of his 7 wins have came by finish. Chuck Buffalo will have a big advantage on the ground, but he does like to stand and bang, so this could be fun.
Yeah, Chuck Buffalo, man, look out for this guy. John said comes from CFFC, which continues to just breed high-level UFC talent. And in his last win, he handed a guy named Raheem Forrest his first professional loss. And let me tell you guys, Raheem is a bad man. I'd encourage you guys to go look Raheem up as well. And mark my words, that's a guy. Raheem Forrest is a name that I think a lot of UFC fans are going to know about very soon. Really, so huge win for Radke in that one. He's a high-level grappler, black belt. I believe he's like the jiu-jitsu coach at his gym, but man, he bangs too. Yeah. And I think he is a big problem for Blood Diamond.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, if you're Blood Diamond, you got to look at, he has been like knocked out to the body. Like he does get hit because he likes to brawl too, but if you get your back close to that cage, he's shooting that double A quick. So a lot of opportunity there.
Couldn't agree more. Let's get into the first fight on the main card, boys, and let's kick it off in the light heavyweight division with Tyson Pedro versus Anton Turkalj. And boys, let us begin with the native Aussie, Tyson Pedro. I think the best way you can kind of sum up Tyson Pedro's UFC career so far is inconsistent a bit, right? Which is really unfortunate because when Pedro came into the UFC, I remember kind of feeling about him the same way I feel about Carlos Ulberg, and that's because his first 2 wins were against Khalil Roundtree and Paul Craig. Like, those are 2 big
finishes,
first-round finish wins, man. And I'm like, okay, this guy's one to watch. But as it sits today, he's just 5-4 in the UFC, so kind of just over that 500 hump. He is coming off a unanimous decision loss to Modestas Bukauskas back in February, a performance that I think even he would kind of admit wasn't his best. Kind of seemed to gas a little. Something just seemed a little off there from him. But he did have back-to-back first-round TKO wins coming into that fight over Harry Hunsucker and Ike Villanueva. His opponent, Anton Turkalj, comes in seeking his first UFC win. Since joining the UFC roster, he has gone 0-2. His most recent loss was against Victor Petrino back in March. And in all fairness, the other loss was to Gelatin Almeida. So take that for what it is.
Who doesn't age well?
Yeah. So to me, it's kind of a guy, this matchup is a guy in Pedro who, you know, when he's on, he has shown he can compete with the best at this division. And then for Turkalj, this is a guy who I think he's going to be coming in, just lay it all out on the line because he could be fighting for his UFC future here. So we will start with John. Who do you like in this fight and why?
I like Tyson Pedro. He's been training at City Kickboxing for about 4 years, but before that, him and his dad just literally moved camp to camp. And if you look at his record around 2022, that's a couple years after he's been, because he fought in 2018 and lost to Shogun, didn't fight again until 2022, and that's when he got his 2 knockouts. That's City Kickboxing. His last fight wasn't his best showing, but it wasn't like he just got dogged out there. It just wasn't a great fight. But I think Tyson Pedro is going to be feeling that energy from everybody on the camp, and I mean, just anytime you can get more rounds with some of the best fighters in the world, you're liable to show out. So I'm going to take Tyson Pedro here.
Who you like, Brandon?
Tyson Pedro. Any guy who gets a Kimura trap off a single leg and finishes with the Kimura, like I have to take it.
This guy and his Kimura traps.
But no, honestly, too, like I think he's 8-2 when he's fought in Australia, so he tends to do pretty well when he's fighting at home. So I like the momentum there, and like you talked about the City Kickboxing guys, I think that's going to go either really good or maybe we could see a little bit of a downfall. But I think for the most part, when guys are linked up like that, it tends to help the momentum. So I like that he's kind of early on the card as well. So I'm taking Pedro as well.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't super familiar with Turkalj before researching for this fight. You know, I remember the fight with Gelatin Almeida, but it's kind of like that Reese McKee versus Hamzat Chimaev, right? Where I remember the performance. Like, don't so much remember the opponent there.
He was part of Gelatin's jab, 1-2, takedown.
Right. Well, and that fight was at 220, so it wasn't even at 205. So, you can take that for what it is, like I said. I can overlook the gelatin Almeida, right? Like, I mean, it just is, that guy's a freak. He's a future champion. So, sorry, man, it just happens. It was like, what's his name that just won the tough? I can't even remember. And I was like, man, when you look at his 0-3 UFC run, he fought like Shane Burgos, Thiago Moises, and somebody else, I don't remember, but like just killers. And it's like, that's a tough draw, man. But it's hard for me to kind of overlook some things that I saw in the Petrino match, because though he did display a lot of heart, man, and a great chin. I mean, he was getting pieced up in that fight. The striking defense definitely seems to be an issue to me there. He also seems significantly slower than Petrino, and I think that's going to be the same problem here against Pedro. I think Pedro's going to have a speed advantage as well. I think Pedro's just going to kind of stay on the outside, look to land the big counter. Pedro also has devastating teeps to the body, man, and I think he can start using those, kind of soften Turcali up, help lead to those openings. Now, Turcali does seem to have some heavy hands. I think he might look to wrestle as well, but again, as Brandon said, Pedro's just so good.
Yeah, he's a good grappler.
Yeah, and another thing that makes me nervous is if Turcali does start grappling, Pedro has never won a fight that left round one. All of his wins are coming round one. So the durability, of Turcali could end up being like a big enemy here for Pedro. But I do think Pedro's going to find the openings he needs. May not come in round one, but he's going to have to find a way to win fights outside of the first round to stick around in the UFC. So I say he starts here, and that's how I think he's going to do it probably round two, because Turcali's tough, man. Yeah. He is a tough guy.
You're taking Pedro too?
Yeah, Tyson Pedro. Yeah, probably round two.
Dorman says he thinks Pleasure Man gets his first win in by sub.
The Pleasure Man. I do think it's going to have to be. I think he's going to have to take him down. I do think, but Pedro's just so well-rounded, and he's consistently shown it. But
and I think when these guys with a striker base, when they come through city kickboxing with that feint system that they use and different angles and stuff that they use, you see these guys starting to pick it up. Even with Olberg, you're seeing him like getting a lot more fluid, setting stuff up a lot better. Yeah. And for somebody like Pedro, who has such so much experience, but now getting this under his belt, I think he can only make him better.
The only thing that last fight with Blachowicz, man, that just was weird, but it was really uncharacteristic, I felt like, too, for him. So that's why I'm like, all right, I'm going to kind of like overlook that one a little bit, because I do think he'll find the finish here. Next fight, boys, we're going to the heavyweight division, and it's a rematch in the heavyweight division with Justin Tafa versus Austin Lane. And these two just fought back in June. However, the matchup ended in a no contest when just about 30 seconds into the match, Austin Lane lands the Captain Insano double eye poke on Tafa. Just a freak accident, man, where Tafa, he kind of like dipped into it almost. But Justin Tafa was unable to continue, and it was bad. I mean, there was no way. Both fingers, knuckles deep, it was in there. So it's not surprising to see this fight rebooked. That was kind of the general consensus after the fight. If you remember, Tafa had come a long way. It was like, oh, he came all this way to end like that. But before that last fight, Justin Tafa came in on back-to-back first-round finishes over Harry Hunsucker and Parker Porter back in February. And the last fight with Tafa was actually Austin Lane's UFC debut, coming in off the Contender Series. And prior to that eye poke, he won 6 straight in his MMA career, including that first-round TKO win over, I can't remember who it was in the Contender Series now. Can't remember off top.
It was Jacoby.
Yeah. And there wasn't much in that first fight between these two to take away. There just is literally 30 seconds. But I can say both of these guys like to get their business done inside the first round. 10 out of 12 of Lane's wins have come in the first round. 4 out of 6 of Tafa's wins also came in round one. So it could be another quick night between these two. Let's just hope eye pokes and nuts stay out of it. That's what I'm hoping.
Headbutts.
Yeah, no fingers and nuts, man. Let's just keep them out of it. Yeah, no headbutts, no funny business. John, who you taking?
I'm taking Justin Tafa here. I think he's going to ride some of the momentum that his brother got last card. What's his name? Junior Tafa, also heavyweight. They were supposed to fight on the same card for that fight where this happened, but I just think Justin Tafa just has that off button, and I think that Lane's going to be very aggressive because he wants to get that as well. But I just feel like sometimes you get these Samoan guys that just will plant their feet, eat something, and then hit you with something big. So I'm taking Justin Tafa here.
I'm taking Tafa as well. I think Lane's probably the superior athlete in terms of like movement speed, and but I think Tafa has just that power, like John was saying. I think think the leg kicks are probably going to play dividends a little bit early, and then you'll see that hand land. And I think he's, like you said, I think he's got the ability to take his lights out. I think experience is going to pay dividends here against Lane. I know Lane's got quite a few fights, but I think the fights that Tafa's got in the UFC are going to show through, even though he's only been about, well, he had a little bit of a layoff, but I think since 19 he's been in the UFC. But anyway, I'm taking Tafa.
Yeah, with Lane, man, what you see is what you get. Just a super big, athletic, former NFL player, right? Very aggressive. And despite this technically being just his second UFC fight, he actually has more MMA experience than Justin Tafa, believe it or not. 6 more fights, to be exact, which I thought was very interesting. But yeah, I'm going with the bad man, Justin Tafa here. I think despite giving up the size and the reach, I think he's actually going to have success in the striking. I think he's going to have success with his speed, man. He's actually a pretty fast guy. As mentioned, both men have power. But again, when I watch the tape on both of them, as limited as Lane's is, you kind of got to go watch some old stuff. But
Right.
I just see Tafa with the speed advantage and the power as well. I think he could also have a durability advantage here as well. Despite physical appearances, Justin Tafa actually has some pretty good cardio, man. He really does. And then Lane likes to kind of do these like blitzing attacks, you know. When he does it, he just has a habit of leaving his chin up. And I think Tafa's just going to find that big counter, man, and put him out. I really do. But I would be shocked either way if this does leave the first round.
Well, and I think that all those guys and we'll talk about it with Tai Tuivasa too, but even with Mark Hunt, they're all like 6 foot stubby, so they're used to practicing hitting high, and you would think 6 foot to 6'6" and that reach advantage could be a lot, but I think these guys train a lot of hitting taller people because they know at heavyweight there is going to be those 6'3", 6'4" athletes, and they're just going to be down there trying to chop down the tree.
Very interesting. We've gone through 2 and we've all picked exactly the same, which is kind of the theme of this card, right? And I think that's where like some of the where people are like, because it's like some of these matchups just they do seem a little bit one-sided. But again, like we talked about, is
one of them's liable to be wrong.
Somebody's gonna upset.
Or maybe they're all wrong.
Here,
you never know
with
these nights, man.
You do never know, and what you never know is what's next. Because there's a story to tell about this fight. We have a very interesting flyweight division matchup with number 10 ranked Manel Kape as he takes on UFC debutant Felipe Dos Santos. And Dana White actually said it best with Manel Kape, and that is that if he didn't have any bad luck, he'd have no luck at all.
Right.
Kape was set to face, obviously, Kai Kara-France on this card. It was a huge opportunity for him. Then about 2 weeks ago, Kai backs out with the concussion. And for Kape, canceled bouts has just been the story of his UFC tenure so far. He actually started his UFC career with 2 canceled bouts before he actually got his first one. And in total, since he is signed for the UFC, he has had 5 fights in the promotion, but he's also had 7 fights canceled, which is pretty crazy. I don't know, we've ever seen a fighter that's had more fights canceled than actual fights, but I present to you Manel Kape, Exhibit A. And I know he had some pretty strong words for Kai backing out on social media. Obviously, the stuff that played out at the presser. But I genuinely feel that's just a lot of frustration, man. And you kind of have to understand it. Imagine, for him, he was coming in, ton of hype into the UFC, stumbled out of the blocks in terms of performances, right? Got a couple early losses.
Champion, though.
Right. But he's kind of found himself as of late. He was going to get this massive opportunity against the number 5 ranked guy in his division. And then here you are, you're at another cancellation. That's just, I can't imagine, it's got to be demoralizing.
Well, let's not forget, before that, you had a match set up with the former champion, Figueiredo, and then it was, that guy, my eye's not ready, or whatever it was. So you went from having the number 1 contender to getting a chance at number 5 to getting a guy getting his debut.
Yeah.
And that can't be good on you. And, you're doing traveling for this, you're training for this. So there's a lot of frustration there for sure.
Dude, there's so much frustration. I think if Izzy could catch weight him, he would fight him at like 150 pounds maybe.
You might just try to challenge him to an absolute situation.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost like the feud you didn't know you needed, but
right?
You're glad you got it.
It's like Tony Ferguson, Verdum back when they were going at it.
Yeah.
Dude, yes, it's the best. It's the best feud since Verdum Ferguson. You better sit down, I'll ankle pick you. You mean ankle pick you? That's like the best ever. So let's look at the matchup, this Dos Santos Kape real quick. As mentioned, Kape coming in on a good run of form. He's won his last 3 straight bouts with finishes over Zumagulov and Ode Osborne. And most recently, a unanimous decision win over David Dobrak back in December. His opponent, Felipe Dos Santos, gets the opportunity of a lifetime here, obviously. He was actually set to fight in this season's Dana White Contender Series. However, his opponent backed out for medical reasons, or he missed weight. I can't remember what it was. But either way, he gets this rare opportunity to not only make his UFC debut on a pay-per-view card, but also face top 10 talent doing it. He's a perfect 7-0 in his MMA career. And his most recent victory was a unanimous decision win over Hugo Paiva at LFA 146 in November of last year. Man, I mean, if he pulls it off, right, it's kind of hard not to think he's not in the top 15 next week and the rankings come out. Like, I mean how does this work?
It's a norm now, though, right?
Yeah.
You know, this was a last-minute one, but the UFC's been doing this where they've been giving these, like, unknown names a chance to, you know, really put a splash in. We haven't seen a lot of them come through with it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But he does come from a good camp, Shootbox. He's there with Charles Oliveira. He was in the Embedded. Charles, like, FaceTimed him and, you know, kind of hyped him up. I guess his last fight, his guy missed weight and he still fought him, or maybe he just made weight because his manager was basically saying kind of how this all came to be to this point. But I mean, yeah, like you said, this is a huge opportunity for him, and you know, if you're able to turn this up, then I mean, sky's the limit for you.
How much of a chance you giving him, John?
Ooh. About 20. About 20.
That might become a new clip on the soundboard.
Because, I mean, you know, maybe there is a submission thing there. Maybe he throws something big, but it's about 20.
Yeah. So you're going Dos Santos, safe to say.
No. I'm going with Manel.
Or I mean Manel, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Who you got, Brandon? Oh, do you have anything else on it?
No, I was just going to say I think he's going to take out his frustrations on him. Now, it would be interesting to see if maybe he has an adrenaline dump because he is so, like, mad and tense and he just wants to go out there and do it. And these shootbox guys are durable. Every single one of them has got a chance that we didn't even hear of. They got blonde hair. They get a little bit of that Oliveira, so he'll have to like kind of temper himself. But I think that as long as he stays level-headed, I mean, he has all the skills to pull off.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm taking Cobb here. Small, tiny part of me wants to go to Saunders just to separate myself from Nate because I'm trying to catch up. But I'll go with Cobb. We'll play safe.
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of reminds me of like really when Cobb came into the UFC, like John said, you know, right off the bat, you get Alexandre Pantoja, right? Like that's tough, man. And it was just a little too much too soon for him, maybe. And Dos Santos isn't even coming in as hyped or as credentialed as Cobb did, right?
Right.
And again, you know, just with kind of the footage I was able to see on Dos Santos, which there's not a ton on YouTube, but there was a little bit. As John mentioned, great gym there at Shoot to Box. They're gonna have him ready to go. He'll be ready to go. The only thing I will say is I do worry Kopp maybe overlooking him a little too much because he is so angry, like John said. And this isn't a fight that he can just go in there and coast because Dos Santos is going to be pressing the action. And one thing that killed Kopp early in his career was the low output. He was a little gun shy. And some of those, that definitely does seem to be something that he's fixed in these last 3 wins especially. But I think it would take a performance like that from Kopp for Dos Santos to kind of pull out the win here. And Dos Santos does have nothing to lose as well. We can't forget that. This is a free shot. We've seen countless times where guys can come in and be very dangerous, at least in spots like this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and another thing, although we haven't seen very many people pull this off, a lot of times we walk away saying, hey, full camp.
Yeah.
You know, who knows what this guy could do.
Yeah, the bangs. Well, the
Diego Lopez.
Yeah.
Couldn't see it over the bangs, baby.
Yeah. But, you know, Kopp to me is just genuinely starting to become looking like one of the best flyweights in the world. His feints, his counter striking is just absolutely elite. He's good at timing that knee down the middle as well as guys are coming in. That's such a dangerous part of his game. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see here. I think he's going to kind of pull Dos Santos into a big shot. I really do. And I think he's going to finish him. Dos Santos is super aggressive. He does get a little wild.
He does get hit.
Yeah, you just can't do that against a striker at this level.
Well, in the speed, because if you look at even like the O'Day Osborne fight, where somebody would have landed 1, he's landing 3.
Yeah.
He's throwing combos, and you just can't leave it holes for somebody like him.
Dude, couldn't agree more. Boys,
who are you taking? You say Cobb?
Yeah, okay. Manel Cobb, yeah. I don't say all that just to take
make sure.
all that just to say Dos Santos. I mean, hey, man, like I said, I do think he's got a free shot here, and, you know, Cobb can't come in and overlook him because he is well-rounded too. And I think you might have said something about getting caught in a scramble is he does have good finishing, like jiu-jitsu finishing as well. So if he can create some kind of wild scramble, man, anything is possible at that point for show. Boys, we are already there to our main event. And we have a matchup between 2 top 10 heavyweights, number 6 Tai Tuivasa versus number 8 Alexander Volkov. Easy for me to say. Let us begin with Bam Bam Tuivasa, who comes into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak with back-to-back knockout losses over Cyril Gane and Sergey Pavlovich. Back in December was that Pavlovich fight. Yeah, last December. Yep. That's almost exactly a 9-month layoff for him as well. Before the back-to-back setbacks, however, he was on a 5-fight win streak, which culminated in that big elbow win over Derek Lewis. And heading into that Gane fight, man, everyone was starting to kind of think contender status for Tuivasa was on the line in that fight. And man, when you just kind of stop and think of what could have been if he gets past Cyril Gane, imagine Tai Tuivasa in a heavyweight title match.
Do you want to talk about could have been? Imagine that whole I'm hurt, and then he just like unleashed on him. If that would have been the one, like
we should do that. We should do something on the pod once where we do like kind of like change the course of history. Like,
I brought that up, like the what if idea. Like what if, what happens in a world where, this happens.
Yeah, but you got to go like 4 or 5 next fight. Like what? So then he wins. So then you'd have to go back and see like who would he have faced if he beat Gane, and then kind of like stack.
Somebody on Twitter posted a video of the Pereira Strickland fight, and it said, if this would have landed, we have a different history. And but it was Strickland just throwing like a regular like check left, but he was like whiffed it. He was like 5 feet away from him, but it was hilarious.
Looking to extend Tuivasa's losing streak, though, is the Russian Alexander Volkov. And Volkov is one of the most experienced veterans in the heavyweight division, as he is entering into his 47th professional MMA bout. He does so riding a 2-fight win streak, comes in off back-to-back first-round TKO finishes over Jairzinho Rozenstruik and most recently Alexander Romanov back in March. And I say this all the time with Volkov, and that is he only loses to the elite level talent, right? 14 fights in the UFC. He's lost just 4. And when you hear the names, he's lost to Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Cyril Gane, and Tom Aspinall. You kind of see what I mean there.
Yeah.
But the question beckons, I suppose, is Tai Tuivasa a member of that elite club for you guys heading into tomorrow night?
For me, he is. I'm taking Tai Tuivasa here.
Huh?
And I think, and what I draw to is the Stefan Struve fight, where, like I said, he was able to target that chin, hold him up against the cage, and land stuff. Now, Struve is not the finisher that Volkov is. I really think that whoever can land a big shot to kind of lean it their way is going to be able to get to a finish. But I don't think this goes to decision at all. Either, Ty's going to get worn down and get finished by Volkov, or Volkov's going to eat a big punch like the Derek Lewis fight where, he got a little safe and then, one lands on the chin. That's possible, and Ty can do that as well. So I'm going to take the home cooking here, and I'm going to go with Tai Tuivasa.
I'm taking Volkov. So we finally have some separation here. I think that the last couple fights with Ty have looked a little rough. Like even his win over Lewis, he got rocked in that fight. Like there was a moment there where we weren't sure if he was going to make it out of that one.
I feel like that happens in most of his fights.
He rocked Gane too, though.
Yeah, that is true.
He did rock Gane, but like, and
what if Gane just doesn't get up, man? What if he doesn't get up?
His belt's just a shoe.
I mean, there you go.
Tied around him with a shoelace.
Yeah.
Dude, he's definitely like shotguns with the belt, right? Like he just holds
100%.
it.
I think Volkov has the ability to just pick him apart. It still could look like his loss to Lewis, where Lewis got that real late knockout against him. I think Ty carries that same power, but just as of late, Ty's chin has just been a little questionable, which I think with Volkov too, his last 2 fights were knockouts. So Volkov's showing some power that we haven't really seen out of him too. So I think we might see a little bit of that here. So I like Volkov as long as he can maintain the distance and utilize his game plan and just really keep Ty at bay. And I think I like Volkov there. So are we doing round and method too?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take Volkov. I'll take him by knockout. I'll say 2nd round knockout.
I didn't pick the round of method. I'm going to say 1st round knockout for Ty.
Okay. Yeah, I went back. I'm like John. I went back and watched the Struve fight, right? Like, just kind of makes a little bit of sense. And he did fight a good fight there. Kept Stefan Struve's back on the cage. He was always cutting him off. And the biggest difference was the leg kicks, man. He landed about 4 or 5 of those things. And Struve was already, like, limping and not moving right. And honestly, I do think that he can fight a very similar fight here and kind of find success in that same way. However, I think Volkov is still one of the best heavyweights in this division. And I still think a title shot could be in his future. I really do believe that. He continues to look better, as Brandon mentioned, especially in these last 2 fights. And he has shown a certain level of nastiness that I just don't think that we've really seen from him in a while. And that's why I really am going with him here. I think he is going to make the range difficult for Tai. You know, one thing Struve never did was he never got Tai to respect the distance in the fight, right? You know, and I think with Volkov, he is going to do that. And the biggest way Volkov will kind of dictate that range is his front kicks to the body, man. He is one of the best at throwing those kicks to the body. And we just recently saw Tuivasa hurt bad to the body against Ciryl Gane, right? Which, you know, led to the finish essentially. And I think if he starts kind of stabbing Tai in the gut, right, he may get a little desperate because he's going to be thinking about that Gane fight maybe, right? And like he might get desperate, he might get reckless, which is going to open him up for a big straight shot from Volkov. His straight shots are just lethal, man. I'm also just not crazy about Tai coming off of these back-to-back finishes, and it's not even just him getting finished or knocked out, it's how they happen and who they were by, man. Especially the Pavlovich one. I mean, that's just like scary stuff.
Well, and I think for Volkov too, like the Romanov fight was rough, but Romanov, like his energy
that was that Utah Salt Lake fight. Yeah, that
one was rough. But obviously the Rosenstruck fight before that was like, okay, he's still striking with these top level guys. Definitely has the best tattoo in all heavyweight. And in the embedded, I just want to say this too. It was funny. He's saying, like,
wait, didn't Tom Aspinall just get like the exact same back tat? Don't they have like the same back? Because I feel like we were talking about that.
Oh, I think Hooker got a samurai on his back.
I think it was Dan Hooker, and we were like, that's the Volkov.
Yeah. But on the embedded Volkov, it was funny. Volkov was talking about how, like, after the fight, hey, you know, Ty's a good guy. I want to get a beer with him, but just not through a shoe, please.
What's the over-under that Dan Hooker drunk one night in where's he from? New Zealand, right? Auckland?
I believe so.
Walks into a tattoo shop, just pissed off his ass. Holds up a picture of Volkov's back. Give me that.
I mean, you never know with him.
You do never know. I love.
He got that and the shin tats out of nowhere.
Oh, so. I love Dan Hooker, man. Such a rare breed, and John thinks he's a linebacker, even better.
Definitely is.
Obviously, Tuivasa is fighting in Australia as well, so he is going to have the crowd. But that historically hasn't helped him either too much. He is 2-2 in his native country since joining the UFC, so he's just at 500 fighting in Australia. I wouldn't count him out completely. Obviously, he's still Bam Bam. He can catch anyone in this division. But I have to go Volkov, as I said, and I think it's gonna.
Sorry, no separation for you.
Yeah, no separation.
Shocker.
It's just my chance to try to catch you.
What'd you say?
What did I say? I said second round.
I like the second round, man. Dang. All right, I'll go first round, but I'm excited for this one. I am. And anytime Tai love Tai Tuivasa.
Dude, I like Tai with the hair, man.
I know he's kind
of
in
the wind, man. He's a little.
I feel like he doesn't get as much credit as Cheeto for like always changing form.
So that's true too.
This is definitely a new form Tai. So maybe I'm not handicapping that correctly because you never know, right?
And it seemed like in the embeddeds, this camp he was just kind of with friendly and friends and people that he's been training with earlier.
I love Tai Tuivasa.
Yeah, dude. I just want to see what that place does if he lands a big shot.
I also, one thing that I was kind of kicking around, but I'm like, man, there's just not many examples of it. I wouldn't be completely shocked to see Volkov take him down either. But I just feel like when you look at go through his fights, there's just not a lot that shows. Like, he's not really attempting a ton of takedowns.
Well, I don't know if you want to take a chance with somebody who could uppercut you like
and that's
that,
the
too.
Tough thing
if that's
too.
not your thing.
You got to get inside.
Maybe a trip.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you never know on that, but yeah, it's interesting.
Here we go, boys. The main event in the middleweight division for the middleweight title. The champ, Israel Adesanya versus number 5, Sean Strickland. And the now 2-time champ, Israel Adesanya, will be coming into his first title defense of his newly crowned reign. He is coming off his second round redemption knockout over Alex Pereira back in April after winning the unified title against Robert Whittaker back in 2019.
Who remembers that?
I loved it. Man. Izzy had successfully defended the middleweight title a total of 5 times before losing it to Pereira, one fight prior to that last knockout victory. And he will look to extend and start a new run of title defenses against the first-time title challenger, Sean Strickland. And I think the old cliche of the best ability is availability suits no one better than Sean Strickland.
Right.
And this fight was originally planned to be the grudge match, right, between Adesanya and the new number 1 contender, Dricus du Plessis. However, DDP said he needed more time to heal, recover from the bout with Robert Whittaker. That left the door open for a new challenger. And the pressure was kind of on the UFC, right, to find a dance partner for Izzy here in Australia. And the man that landed the spot is Sean Strickland. He comes into this off back-to-back wins over Nasruddin Imavov back in January, and most recently his second-round TKO victory over Abus Magomedov back in July. And though this is Strickland's first UFC title opportunity, he's definitely no stranger to 5-round main event spots, because of Strickland's last 6 fights, he has main evented 5 of those fights, and in those 5, he has a record of 4-1, with the one loss being the close split decision loss to Jared Cannonier. And I know, like, this may not feel like the biggest matchup we could have gotten, right? We kind of talked about it, but aside from availability, right, this is the freshest matchup you can give Izzy outside of Dricus du Plessis, and Strickland has been an extremely serviceable guy for the UFC. He's always answered and stepped up in these big spots when they've needed him to. So for me, this isn't a question of, like, does he deserve it? But, you know, there was the whole rumor that the UFC wasn't so sold on doing Sean Strickland, right? So I guess we can start there. Do you guys think promotionally that maybe there is a little bit of, like if you could get, you know, Dana White, Sean Shelby, like all the big guys in the UFC in a room, do you think there's a little bit worry on their part that Sean Strickland may be their middleweight champion come tomorrow night?
On Twitter, Sean Strickland put out that he did his first round of interviews, and as soon as he walked away, they deleted him.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's what I'm saying.
And I mean, and there's been a lot of interviews.
How do you sell Sean Strickland?
Right.
I don't know. I shouldn't say that because they did Colby, but I feel like Colby's not even as, like,
No,
polarizing.
because Colby is I feel like Colby's making this up. Sean Strickland isn't making this
true.
up, and that makes it even more tough. And it's the same thing for Izzy. Like, he doesn't what he does is him, and it just doesn't always come off great. Sometimes it is corny, but for Sean Strickland, it's always going to be inappropriate. Like, I've never even seen him say anything like even slightly kind of humble, or I mean, maybe even a little bit humble, but at the end it kind of ends with a but I don't care because I'll kill him or something. But
listen, you guys.
Yeah, and you know, there's also something to, you know, you think about what Izzy's done to this division, because Strickland's only beat one ranked opponent, and that's Hermanson, who was ranked 12th.
Did you think he beat Jared Cannonier?
I thought it was real close.
I did too.
And it's tough. And if he gets that win, then there's definitely, that's not even a comment you can make. But he just had, you know, obviously getting that last fight with a boost where it's like, you know, we're just throwing you somebody.
Again, not his fault, man.
No.
And, like, you know, you go back to what Dana said, nobody wants to fight a boost, right? And,
right.
And Strickland did it. You know?
No, 100%. But I do think there's
Azardini Mavov, he took that fight on like 2 weeks' notice, right? You know, right after that Cannonier. He went 5 rounds with Jared Cannonier, and then 3.5, 4 weeks later, he's fighting Azardini Mavov, who is this crazy French daggy guy that everybody swears is going to be a champ, right? So
but I do think there is something to Strickland where it's just like, you don't know what he's going to say if he wins. You don't even know what he's going to say if he loses. There's just this, like, we need to put him on delay because we don't know.
I'll tell you what, I think they like it a little bit more.
Really?
I think the press conference and, like, the love he's getting from Australia is evident
weird.
in that.
It's interesting.
Like, I think you.
So you think they're going the other way? They're probably like, man, this guy, we could actually do something.
I think even they're thinking to themselves, like, we might be surprised how much this guy might sell some tickets. And, like, he might have some love behind him from people we didn't expect. And then as far as, like, the matchup, I think I said when we thought this was going to be a thing some time ago, you're not going to be dizzy with a jab, man. Like, you need more than a jab. And I don't know what Strickland's shown as of late. That's something that Izzy can't really handle. But if all he's bringing in this fight is a jab,
well, he keeps bringing up I've been training wrestling, I needed to do it, maybe I should do it, I don't know, but I probably won't.
Yeah, but he keeps saying, I'm ready to lose some brain cells.
Right.
Yeah.
So you never know if you're going to get that. Like, if you're thinking smart, he's a black belt and he can wrestle. I even seen Brendan Allen said that he trained with Magomed Ankalaev and was taking him down at will, like easily. So, you know, there's something there, but when you get in there and you're standing in front of him, are you going to do that, or are you going to try to do what you did with Alex?
One more thing before we get to our picks. I do think this will probably be a bigger discussion for Monday's episode, right? When we actually have a winner and a clearer idea of what could be next. But I think it is worth questioning now, and that is, do you guys think Dricus du Plessis may have made a bit of a mistake by not taking this fight with Izzy? And the reason I ask this is this week Dana was asked if whoever wins is Dricus du Plessis the bang-on #1 contender. He has been essentially responding saying that he doesn't know, and said, you know, you guys know I don't like when guys don't take fights. And what we discussed a couple weeks ago with Merab Dvalishvili, I think kind of applies here as well, and that is, you got to take your shots in this sport when they come, man, because the sport is moving faster than ever, right? There's more fight nights, there's more pay-per-views than ever. I mean, we've been fans for over 15 years now or over, and like there's just, it's like, man, I remember when it used to be like once
you had to wait
like
4 or 5 months for a contender to come up.
And that's the thing we talked about with Merab is like, dude, contenders are being made almost weekly now. Like, how many times were we like, this could be number one contender matchup. He wins this, maybe one more. I mean, it just keeps going, man. And then next month, right, there's a massive middleweight matchup between Khamzat Chimaev and Paulo Costa.
Mm-hmm.
And man, if one of these guys goes out and impresses, especially if it happens to be the guy who's nicknamed Boris, Khamzat Chimaev, it's hard not to think that he may leap Dricus du Plessis, even promotionally.
Right.
And even Izzy kind of said as much this week, like, you better chill out, man, because I might just give it to one of those guys type of thing, you know. But I still think Izzy wants Dricus.
Oh,
Don't get me wrong.
Well, he also said that's like that's. I've even seen people saying like historically, as far as a grudge match and the kind of selling itself aspect of it, that's definitely the one.
But let's just speak in hypotheticals, right? Because, and I'm not saying this is my pick. I haven't even thought about that fight. There's too much fighting between now and UFC 294. I'm not even going there. But say hypothetically, Khamzat, because I'm only using Khamzat because we've seen Paulo Costa and Izzy, right? So I think if Paulo Costa wins that fight, the fresher matchup with Dricus definitely would make more sense. I'll say that now. For me, just sitting here today, I'm allowed to change my mind.
Right.
But for a guy like Khamzat Chimaev, man, if he goes out and just, let's say, dusts Paulo Costa in like first round, second round, and just breezes past him,
right.
I mean, dude, you might have missed your shot there.
Yeah. I mean, and we're not even talking about, you know, depending on how things shake out with Pereira at 205, Izzy's talked about wanting to go up and get that. So if, you know, things get delayed enough and he's able to get that title, Izzy might say, you know what, I'm going to put my division on hold and try it.
Okay, well, Izzy said he wants to fight on UFC 300 with Volk. He said that this week as well. What's the bigger fight for UFC 300? Izzy Khamzat? Izzy Dricus du Plessis.
Right, it's Khamzat.
I mean, you got
and not even just because of what, you know, we might think as fans, but he's been getting the push.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
he's one of the guys that the UFC has put their money into. Despite missing weight, despite all these weird things that's happened, he's still the guy for them. And if you put on a performance against Paulo Costa, who a lot of people don't have good performances against, then I mean, it's hard to argue that.
We will shelf that conversation for Monday's episode because, like I said, I think we got to let this thing play out, see what happens. You know, that's the thing too. If Strickland does win tomorrow night, does Izzy deserve an immediate rematch? You know, probably giving, you know, even though it's his second reign, he never defended it the second time, right?
Right.
He is, he was a 5-time champ prior to that, 6-time champ, whatever.
There's also never been a 2-time champ. He's the first middleweight 2-time champ as well.
So we'll see. We'll shelf that for Monday. But let's get to our picks, John. Who you taking? We actually have a theme song for John.
You can go ahead and pull it up.
So John has these picks that he makes sometimes, and John likes to pick with his heart. John, and so to do that, to let people know that John's not actually picking with his brain, we play this theme song to let people know. We call it the Lonely Heart Boys Club, and they are the ones that are reserved most for John's heart. And Israel Adesanya is at the top of this club. So,
well, to be fair, you guys have only not picked him as well, like once.
That's fair.
So, but I'm taking Israel Adesanya here. I think that I don't think Strickland has had enough time to break the habit of the parry and the paw. And I think that with Izzy's feints, his arms are going to get tired probably from reacting to stuff. The leg kicks are going to be there. And I feel like somebody who just wants to come forward and paw is going to be somebody who, like Izzy's probably just been waiting for. You know, with Pereira, he's still counter-striking. He's throwing his leg kicks. It's a little bit harder to track, but Sean Strickland is going to be going forward, you know, trying to paw punches and throw his own. And I think Izzy's just going to set something up. So I'm going to say second round TKO because I think in the first round it's going to be a little bit more filling out and Sean Strickland maybe trying to blitz at Izzy and try to get a read on him. So I'm going to say second round TKO for Izzy.
Okay, here's the deal. Izzy's the pick. Like Izzy should be the pick for most people. I think it makes the most sense in terms of the matchup. But Nate, you keep doing this thing where you make it incredibly hard for me to gain points on you because we have the exact
He's
same
in your
picks.
head, dude.
I know.
I love it. Rent free, baby.
He's got a bed and everything.
I almost want to just go Strickland now.
I think you should.
Like just because it would probably make you happy because then you should
man.
potentially get another lead.
I think you should.
I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stick with Izzy. We'll take Izzy.
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but the cowardly thing to do is not. But you know, you do you, man.
Izzy, I'm going to go with first round KO.
First round, I like it. I will say this for Sean Strickland. I do think he deserves a ton of credit for getting himself here. I know a lot of it, obviously, circumstantial, as we discussed, but he has continued to make himself available. So I am glad to see him getting rewarded for that as well. And he's done a great job of continuing to win, to get himself here, right? You know, you talk about Nasruddin last minute. You talk about Abus, a guy unranked. There's so many risks in a lot of these fights he takes, but he does take them and he does win. And he's done that by developing this style that's perfect for him. It caters to his skill set. He doesn't get outside of himself, right? It's got him here. But I do totally agree. You know, he's probably going to be a little outgunned in this fight. You guys both said it, but, you know, since that Pereira fight, there just hasn't been much evolution or change to his overall mixed martial arts game that you would like to see going into a fight like this when you're making a pick. You know, I think a lot of the same problems, obviously, that existed for him in that fight are still going to be an issue here, if not even more heightened. No one has better feints than Izzy, as John mentioned, and I think he's just kind of like John said. I think he's going to get those hands moving. I could see him landing a big head kick, counter, pulling him into it, you know, something big.
We haven't got a lot from the chat in a minute, but King Nung did say early into it that what do you say? Strickland gets question mark kicked with a 1-2 follow-up KO against the cage.
That is very specific.
That's how he does it, man. I also seen with Strickland, his coach even said like he needs to do everything right, and Izzy's gonna have to do a couple things wrong because we're talking about the best guy in the world here.
And you know, Strickland teases the wrestling, right? I would still be very shocked if we see that out of him. You know,
he had 4 takedowns against Uriah Hall.
Yeah, man, but even still, like I said, he's catered this style and he's found this style that works for him, and it's gotten you here. Like, I mean, there is something to be said for like switching it up and kind of that shocking element. Like, you know, you shock somebody, but why would you get outside of yourself here?
One thing that does stand out to me, and he said this in an interview after he lost to Pereira, was he was like, okay, I had it in my head at the 2.5 minute mark, I'm going to shoot on this guy. And then at the 2.5 minute mark, he gets hit with that left hook. And so I was like, well, he had the plan.
Yeah,
and
he
then
does. Fair enough.
Well, and for Izzy, you know, he's been spending a lot of time with Craig Jones as he's been with Volkanovski. And you know he's probably getting ready for the Hamzats and the Bo Nickels. If he keeps fighting, these are the guys he's going to have to fight. So he has to develop part of a game there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he's going to come out. I think he's going to get all over Izzy, try to put the pace on him, try to get him moving backwards. But I think for that to work, I think he's going to have to hurt Izzy, right? I think he's going to have to overwhelm him, get him hurt, and then try to follow it up with some shots and things like that. And that's just going to be so tough, man.
Yeah.
He's tough. I think he could hang in there. I think by round 3, Izzy will have downloaded everything he needs to find a finish. Here's a little fun fact. I was going to go first round, Brandon, and I can prove it because I have a fun fact. Brandon likes to say I steal his picks. Sean Strickland has only been knocked out twice in his career, and both were in the first round. So I do like the first round pick there, Brandon, but I will say round 3, KO, TKO. And man, not to even mention another thing, you know, I sent you guys the short interview that Strickland did after the weigh-ins, right, when he was talking to DC and Laura Sanko and them, and he looked miserable, man.
Yeah.
And he even said as much. He's like, you know, that extra pound sucked, man. He looked very uncomfortable. It didn't look like he felt good. And it's like, man, you're already up against it. And, man, that just is one more thing where you're like, again, for somebody that's just trying to pick, right? You know, it's like, whew,
the only thing I will say about this, and it's just fighting being fighting, but sometimes with matchups like this, I get the like past trauma of like the Anderson Weidman where it's like, this ain't gonna be the guy that does it, and then it is the guy. So
and hey, you know, Brandon, you can still change your pick before we move on, because last thing that I'll say is, you know, how many times the night before a big UFC main event like this, we've been sitting here, we feel pretty sure and confident of what's gonna happen, right? Edwards Usman, Grasso Shevchenko, as recently as Aljo O'Malley,
dude, Pena.
And yeah,
Juliana Pena, like we were.
How many times?
Amanda.
Yeah,
all right, move on.
Yeah, how many times have we sat here and been like,
embarrassing?
Embarrassing. Dang it, I already turned it off. But yeah, man, I can't help but sit here with some of those same feelings. Like, you know, the night before this one.
You want to switch your pick?
And but I will say, fights like this, that's why I love the sport. You do truly never know. You do truly never know. You gonna change your pick, Brandon?
Are you gonna change your pick?
No.
Didn't think so.
Let's get into our parlays before we get out of here. UFC 293 parlays, as always. Anytime you're gambling, just be smart, be sensible. We do these strictly for fun with very small amounts of money. We are by no means trying to get rich. I know John usually is, but not me anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
So with that, John, what's your parlay for tomorrow night? Because odds were pretty rough on this one.
Yeah, mine is titled, "That's Not a Knife, That's a Knife." You know where that's from?
Nope.
Crocodile Dundee.
Can you say it with the accent?
No, I don't want to get canceled. I'm not.
For an Australian accent?
Plus, I know he doesn't like accents. He gets a little bit of weird about it.
Yeah. Better
point.
calm down.
So I have a 5-legger with Jack Jenkins on the money line, Carlos Ulberg to win by TKO KO, Justin Tafa on the money line, Tuivasa and Volkov not going the distance, and then Izzy on the money line.
Alrighty, in my parlay for tomorrow night, I am calling it Juicy Oos because we're going 100% Oos, baby. And that is Carlos Ulberg, Tyson Pedro, and Justin Tafa, all money line. And that can be had at around plus 253, baby. Again, some tough.
Yeah, I'm plus 434, and I'm picked all favorites, and it still kind of was tough to get together. But $5 will win you $26. So if you want to take the chance,
go for it, dog.
Go for it.
I love it. Brandon, if you had to pick one fighter not named Israel Adesanya as a lock to win this weekend, who would it be? Anybody on the card?
As a lock?
A lock. Bang on. If you had to bet your mortgage on it. Or your house, I mean.
I don't think I like any of these.
Really?
Cop. I'd say Cop. Manel Cop.
Oh, dang. Not named Manel Cop or Israel Adesanya.
Volkov. He's the only
All
pick
right.
that I was pretty confident with, so I'll take
Feel
Volkov.
bang on about Volkov
Yeah.
then, huh?
Well, if you're taking away Cobb, then yeah, I think Volkov.
Fair enough. Again, just want to thank anybody that jumped in tonight. You know, we kind of knew coming into this one again, you know, there's not a ton of, hype around this card. Not a ton of storylines either. We really tried to pull out of it what we could. So hope you guys still enjoyed it. Anybody that watched live or watches afterwards, again, check out our weekly MMA podcast, the Neon Belly Podcast. Give us a follow on all our socials at Neon Belly Podcast. Also, make sure you are subscribed right here to the MMA Underground YouTube, and make sure you give a follow on all social media as well at the UG. We're going to say something?
Say Dorman came in with his picks.
Oh, yeah. Hold on real quick. I want to get him.
ahead.
Hold on. Also, real quick, make sure you go to mixedmartialarts.com. Stay up to date with all things happening in MMA. And go check out our article that we posted on Wednesday, The Ultimate Crossover.
And a slew of interviews from our boy Nate.
And a slew of interviews.
But
What's
your boy Dorman has no risk, but Ulberg, Cop, Izzy, Lane, and Tafa not to go the distance. It's a plus 106. But he says Ulberg is his 1,000% lock.
Dude, yeah, that's probably mine, dude. I can't explain enough how much I really like Carlos Ulberg, especially in this fight.
You still have, and you also have like a Jamie Malarkey on there, Nasrat, Nazarat, Shane Young. I think he missed weight, so I don't know if that fight's still going to happen.
Yeah, I think it is. He came 2.5 pounds over, I think it was. But yeah, I did see he was the only one that missed weight.
And
on
then
this card.
Kevin Jussiet is the new. Most recent person from City Kickboxing, and he's making his UFC debut, first fight on the card.
Fight on the card. I will say, this is the first pay-per-view that I will not watch live in probably the last 5 years. Because I am leaving. I'm going out of the country. So
yeah, he made that choice.
I did make that choice. So this will be the first pay-per-view I've not watched live. And here's what I will say for a card that, like, again, everybody can say what they want about it. I told Ash, my wife, earlier tonight, I was like, it's not even Saturday yet, and I'm already genuinely getting FOMO.
Yeah. Are you going to stay off your phone and just try to watch it?
No, because I don't even know what service is going to be like. So our plane leaves at like 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to, and it's Sunday morning. So we're going to Indianapolis tomorrow night, but I got to go to bed so early. So I'm going to try to watch the prelims. She told me I'm not allowed to watch them because she's like, you're going to watch them, and then you're going to get all anxious and want to watch them.
Yeah, that's true. Guys,
where you going?
Me.
Huh?
Where are you going?
Don't want to tell you.
Okay.
I'm going to the
Pennsylvania.
The Dominican Republic. The Republic Dominicano. You like it?
I've never been.
Super long gap for us, boys. We won't be back for about 6 weeks for UFC 294. So we'll have to see what we can do about that. Maybe we'll do like an impromptu live show just to talk headlines, fights. We'll see. We got, Fury, Tyson Fury and Ngannou. Maybe we'll drop in and talk about that a little bit. But 294 is a big one. It is worth the wait. You got the lightweight rematch between Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira, Paulo Costa versus Hamzat Chimaev, Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker, and many more. So we'll talk to you guys then. Until then, peace.